Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome along to today's webinar. I'm John James and I'm your host for today's event. This is the first in our Beef Connect webinar series, which is a new partnership between Future Beef and Beef Central. We'll run these every 6 to 8 weeks as a way of connecting those working along the beef supply chain, including researchers, advisors, consultants, suppliers, producers, processors, and even consumers. We hope that through strengthening these connections and sharing the latest R&D results and other topical information, that will help to stimulate innovation and make the Australian beef industry even more profitable and sustainable. Folks, the technology we're using today is really easy to use. Here's an image of the floating control panel. It's fully expanded when you first join, but the clever little thing hides itself after a couple of minutes so that you can better concentrate on the presentation. But if you just click on the little orange arrow, it'll expand out again so that you can see all the panels. We'll be using the Twitter hashtag BeefConnect during today's webinar. So if you already know what that means, jump into it. And for the others who may be scratching their heads, you'll learn all about that shortly. Now, to watch today's webinar, you're probably sitting in front of your computer. However, if you wanted, you could be watching on your mobile device. The catch, however, is that you can watch and listen, but you can't raise your hand, vote in a poll, or type in a question. Sorry about that. Hopefully they'll change that soon. To listen to today's webinar, you can either use your computer's mic and speakers or a telephone. Now, we've had a few issues with the computer audio in the past. So if it gets too annoying for you, you can swap over and use the telephone at any time. We provide a toll-free number, so it won't cost you any more. If you do need to swap over, just go back to the audio control panel and click on the telephone option and then type in the numbers that are shown on your screen. Don't use the one on mine because we all get personalised ones. Now you can interact with us today by raising your electronic hand or by typing in the questions box down at the bottom of the control panel. Only the organisers get to see your hand or what you type. And if you do ask a question, I'll read it out and keep it anonymous. So there's no dumb questions here today. Ask away. Just be aware, though, that there is a large crowd joining us today, so we probably won't be able to answer every question, but we'll do our best. Over 300 people have registered for our event today, and I know that people are still joining us now. So folks, can we just practice? So if you can hear me clearly, can you click and raise your electronic hand, please? Great, I see lots of hands going up. So thanks for that, folks. If you now click on it again, it'll lower your hand. Now, to get the most out of today's presentation, I suggest that you turn off your email and tune in to what our presenters are saying. Take some notes as we go along and jot down questions as they come to mind and type them into the question panel. Today's presentation is being recorded for you to view afterwards, and I'll send you the link in due course. We'll also put a copy of the presentations on our website. It's great that you've been able to join us for this live session, as that way you can ask the questions that you want answered. So, because I'm the curious type, I'd like to know where people are joining us from today. So I'm just going to launch this poll, which should appear on your screen now. So if you can click on the relevant option there, please. Okay, so I'll just give you a few more seconds and then I'll share those results with everyone. So I can see that almost 90% have now voted. So I'll just give you 3, 2, 1, and I'll now share those results with you. So it's great. So I can see that, yeah, there's a large number of people from Queensland, which is great, and a good chunk of people from New South Wales, ACT, as well as WA and NT. And it's good to see a number of Victorians or Tassies and South Australians joining us, and quite a few people from overseas. So if you are from overseas, please type in your little box. I see we've got one person already from Indonesia. which is great. And I know that people have registered from New Zealand and a few other countries. So let me just close that now. Okay, so today we're talking about Twitter and looking at how the beef industry is using it and learning how we can beef up our influence beyond the farm gate. So let's now see in our audience who is actually using Twitter. So this is the second poll. So just a quick one. So are you currently using Twitter? No, and that's why I'm here today. Yes, but I rarely tweet, or yes, and I'm an active user. So if you can quickly pop in your responses there, please. And I'll just close that off in 3, 2, 1. Okay, and I'll share those results with you. So yes, not surprisingly, about half the people have said no, and that's why you're here today. About a third have said yes, but they rarely tweet, and about 1/5 are saying yes, and I'm an active user. So that's great. It's good that we've got a variety of people with us today. Okay, so in just a moment, we'll be hearing from our guest presenters today. They'll each speak for about 10 minutes, and we'll pause after each presentation to answer your questions. So first up, we'll have Matt from MLA, who'll give us an introduction to Twitter and then share with us how MLA is using it to promote Australian beef. After the question break, we'll then hear from Vince from the Feast Fine Foods, who will be giving us his perspective and more of a producer's perspective on using Twitter. And then finally we'll hear from Sam, who will share how AgChat Oz helps connect producers with each other and their consumers. And then and there'll be 5 minutes of questions after each of those. And after the last question break, I'll then invite James to come along and to thank the speakers. So James is from Beef Central, our partner for this series. So ladies and gentlemen, I will now change the presenter over to Matt so that he can get his presentation there for us. Great, okay Matt, we see that there. So ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure to now welcome Matt to share with us some of his knowledge and expertise with Twitter. Over to you, Matt. We can't hear you, so perhaps you're still muted.
I think I'm right now.
Yes, that's good.
Thanks, John, and welcome everyone. It's great to see such a large number of people being involved with this webinar, and we're seeing this increasingly across many events that we do and speaking at conferences or putting things on. There's great interest among our industry to learn more about social media, and obviously today focus primarily on Twitter. So my role here at MLA is to conduct our social media activity, but it's also broader than that. It's about trying to connect with producers and consumers and educate each other on what we do, and doing that through skills and communication using social media. So as John mentioned today, I'm just going to give an introduction to the channel, that is Twitter, and how we're using it at MLA, but also some basics on just how to get set up and some of my tips and considerations when you're thinking about joining the Twitter universe. So I always like to set the scene. Actually, I'll go back a slide, and when we think about what Twitter is, their tagline is finding out what's happening right now with the people and organisations that you care about. And that's really important. To get the most out of Twitter, it has to be relevant to our current situation, and it has to be things that we're interested in and that are going to help us learn or improve our business or our industry. And also, I like to set the scene with the numbers. And the thing about Twitter is there's a lot of numbers. And we also talk about this with Facebook and YouTube. There's just so much information and so many people engaged and involved with these social media platforms. So in terms of Twitter, the recent figures are saying that there's about 200 million regular users, so they're actively involved involved with Twitter as a social media communication channel. And we're looking at about around 500 million tweets per day. Now that's pretty mind-boggling, and we can think, wow, how are we going to be involved with that? How do we filter through the noise? But as we go through today, you'll see that there are certain ways and certain techniques to do that. But I think the main objective here is to be involved in all that information sharing that's happening, not only in Australia but around the world. And almost half of people that use Twitter don't tweet. So that really they're using it to gain information for their own benefit. So they're using it as a curated news feed to find information from people, organisations, news sources that are relevant to them and their particular situation. And interesting, John mentioned this before, the whole rise of mobile devices, so your tablets, your iPads, your iPhones and smartphones, 60% of active users on Twitter are using these devices because it's all about being on the go and being in the moment. So I strongly encourage you to sort of step away from your PC or your laptop and try to engage with Twitter using your mobile devices if you have them handy. And also, I sort of just touched on this, there's a wealth of information out there, so we really have to be mindful of filtering that noise and either connecting through our own content or getting content from others through all that information that is available on Twitter, and trying to make meaningful and relevant connections with those in the industry or those along the supply chain or at the consumer end. So what is Twitter? So the nuts and bolts of what Twitter is, it's sort of, the guy who created it, it's stemmed out of SMS communication on telephones, and basically he was frustrated in the fact that he could only send text messages on his phone to a certain number of people. And out of that, Twitter was born. So it's a text-based messaging system or a microblog, so similar to a large-scale blog, but they're short, sharp messages of 140 characters. But different from the phone is they can go out to 500 million users, if you like, as we just learned, rather than that 1, 2, 3, 4 that a phone can do. As I mentioned, Twitter is all about now. So while this webinar we're on, the Beef Connect hashtag, the content we're talking about is relevant to this point in time. There will be applications for it later or tomorrow or the next day, but generally Twitter is all about what's happening in the news. It might be a current affairs issue, it might be a natural disaster, it might be a topic that's relevant to the public and to now. But primarily it's a announcement space, and it's made up a whole range of things. So yes, there is pointless blabber that's out there. People might be telling you what they're doing right now, what they just ate for lunch. There is certain spam or trolling that can be out there as well. But what we really need to focus on and what we can get out of this is the ability for us to pass along information or gain information for our own benefit. If we're a business or an organisation, the fact that we can promote what we do or let the world know how we do it, we can have a conversation, and that's something that's always been a barrier, maybe for our industry. We can converse with the people that we're trying to, so the consumer or the people who want to know what we do in our beef businesses. And we can also gain news. So not only are we just getting it from a news source, we can now be part of that news in this social media and online environment. So why I think Twitter works for the beef industry? Well, I'm sure everyone here, we're in the beef industry, we know that when we go somewhere where we all connect, we like to talk. And in that way, we like to let others know what we think. And the reason that is because we're passionate about what we do and letting people know how we do it. Also, as an industry, we're thirsty for information and knowledge and to make ourselves better. And I think Twitter is the perfect medium for us to not only give information but receive information. And it's also, there's this unique opportunity for us to connect often where we're not in larger regional centres, we're not in the city. There is an isolation and a separation between stakeholders and also that end consumer. So Twitter and social media in general is allowing us to direct. It's also giving us that multi-directional sort of communication. No longer are we hearing information from news sources that are just coming straight to us. So we might read the paper or listen to talkback radio. Now we can be part of the conversation and put our thoughts and our opinions forward around particular topics. And at the end of the day, playbook what we do. So in terms of how MLA is involved with Twitter, so basically we've used it as an active communication channel since 2011, and now we're engaged with an audience of over 2,500 people, and that's a range of people along the beef supply chain. So that's from on-farm through the processing, food service chefs, restaurants, right down to the end consumer who wants to know about our industry and around the things and the practices we do to produce our beef. The aim for us as an organisation is to share information and engage with followers and on a range of topics relevant to the service that MLA provides, that is marketing and R&D. And Twitter specifically makes up one part of a broader suite of social media communications that we do have as a company. But ultimately it's all about connecting with our stakeholders in the beef industry, and we've to date held over 10 social media workshops around the country and connected with almost 100 producers in that way, giving them the skills to share their stories online using social media. But in terms of Twitter, we report back on marketing and R&D outcomes. We share production information along with information from the markets to help people make their decisions in their business and improve their production capabilities. We also promote events that are relevant to the industry that can be applicable to your business, provide updates and alerts. But we also deliver consumers and end users with information on nutrition, recipes, red meat quality, and also the sustainability credentials around the industry in terms of the environment and animal welfare through different platforms. So in terms of opportunities, just leading into the rest of the discussion we're going to have today, I think there are two key opportunities for the beef industry to use with Twitter and social media more broadly. And the first one is that sharing of information to improve your business and be better at what you do. But second to that is that whole notion of promoting what you do, advocating the way you produce beef to the urban community and those who want to learn more. There's a huge disconnect between our urban environment and what happens on farms around Australia and along the supply chain. So we know that almost 70% of people want to learn more about how their beef is produced, so social media is a great way to do that. So just before I run out of time, I just want to briefly run through what you might see if you want to jump on Twitter after this for that half of you that aren't on Twitter already. So when you first log on to twitter.com, you'll see this home screen where basically you can sign in if you're already on Twitter. Otherwise, what you need to do is sign up. And it's really a simple process by adding your full name, your email address, and creating a password. After this, there'll be a series of prompts, and within a matter of minutes, you're in the Twitterverse. But one thing I think is really important when you're jumping onto Twitter, and that is creating an identity for yourself. So making sure you have a profile that people know that who you are, you're a real person, you're transparent, or your business has its own identity. And that includes providing a profile image rather than the standard egg that Twitter just automatically provides you. It's having a nice background or a header photo to demonstrate what you're all about. A little bit of a bio on what you do and what your interests are, so you can make sure you connect with people and topics that are relevant to you. So the profile is really important. And then the next thing, which is the main aim of the game, is finding those conversations that you want to be a part of. And as I said, there's a lot of information that's out there. So how do we filter it down? Well, there are some key things you need to do. The first thing is finding people or organisations that you think you might like to follow or hear the news that they've got to share. And the way to do that is using the search function at the top of the Twitter webpage or application on your mobile device. And that way you can find those people and see what information they're sharing or putting out there. The second is using a hashtag, and today we've got the hashtag BeefConnect. And what a hashtag does, it pulls in a topic or an area of interest together, so people who are talking about a particular thing or topic can use that hashtag so others can then join the conversation or find out the information around that particular topic. Twitter is also handy in that it provides you suggestions of who you should follow or who you might like to follow, and they base this off a range of things including others that you follow and also people you may be connected to in your email address you supply and those sorts of things. They also supply a list of trends that are happening in your particular region, and this can be done on a country level and also a city level. But as you can see from the example here, when I took this screenshot yesterday, there's a lot of information around Easter or trends or hashtags around Easter at the moment. So it's that's another way for you to find conversations you may want to dip in. In terms of following people, you'll get this the follow symbol that you see on the right-hand side of the screen there. Now, by clicking on that, that will then connect you to follow that person. In this instance, it's MLA. And then you're then connected. And I think the whole thing about Twitter too is making sure that you're getting value from the people you follow. So if you follow someone that doesn't give you the information or value in following them, you can easily unfollow them by just clicking that button as well. So finally, my tips and considerations in terms of Twitter are first to listen, jump on and see what's happening. That can't hurt. You can sit back and no one needs to know you're there. The next one is follow. Start to follow organizations, industry bodies, people, chefs, restaurants, farming companies that are of interest to you and see what information they're putting out that can be valuable and help you in your business. The next is participate. Maybe retweet something they do. Maybe engage with them and say something back and just be involved in that conversation. And finally, create. When you're comfortable enough, join that conversation and curate and start to put out your own tweets to the universe. The next one is for, I suppose, when you're being creative and creating those tweets is be relevant, be current, and be informative to the audience that is out there and might want to be connected with you. Thirdly, embrace the hashtag. So today we've got Beef Connect. So if you're on Twitter now, use it, share information, and let others who aren't part of this webinar know what's going on. Sam will speak about it later, but use AgChatOz. It's a great way to connect our community and be part of that conversation and debate the issues that are going on. Retweeting is a really easy way to get started in Twitter without having to create your own content, but also just acknowledging that you like what other people do and think your audience or other audiences might like to be part of that. Know how to stay in control of your time and also of Twitter. So there are applications external to Twitter itself, like TweetDeck and Hootsuite, that can help manage your time and stay on top of your Twitter account. You could get quite involved in it. And finally, find your champions. And so what I mean by that is find people who will help you, support you in the early stages, and AgChatOz and that community is a great way to start. And embrace that community, be part of it, share what they have to say, but also give content that'll be relevant to them. Thanks, John.
Great, thanks for that, Matt. So we've got a few questions, but at this stage I will just make Vince the presenter so he can be getting ready for his session. So Matt, just a couple of questions. So the first one is, you mentioned TweetDeck. If people want to learn more about using TweetDeck, do you have any suggestions where they might go?
First off, I would say, well, the MLA website at mla.com.au/community has some really good basic level information on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and social media in general. So that's a good first point of call. But other than that, Google is really your friend. It has a wealth of information and how-tos on those external platforms, but also Twitter itself. There's a wealth of information out there. So use the internet as a training ground if you can't get into workshops that are being run or find what you're looking for.
Okay, yep, that's good. Now, we've got someone on our webinar today who's going to hold a conference introducing social media, particularly Twitter, to smaller independent butchers. So do you have any tips or case studies or suggestions that you'd have for them with that activity? And would you mind if they contacted you directly after today's webinar?
No, I don't mind if they contact me directly, but I think some tips are, if you're a smaller butcher and you're independent, it's all about creating that identity and a rapport with your customers or potential customers. So no matter what business you're in, whether it is on farm as a livestock producer or right along the supply chain at the end in retail, I think it's all about having a story to share and identifying to your customers what you're all about. What's your sort of the boundaries that you operate under, what's your mission, what do you try to do, what have you got to offer, and build that relationship. And then you can also promote what you do. Like I know that some retailers do promote when they've got a special on, or they'll promote when they've got a new product line in, or they'll provide information on the backstory of their suppliers and where their their beef or their lamb has come from. So I think it's all about sharing your story and your point of difference from someone else.
That's great. Okay, thank you. I think we'll hold it there. So thanks for that, Matt. So Vince, over to you.
G'day all. My name is Vince. I'm the marketing and online manager of Twitter from our perspective in our business. Firstly, I'll send our apologies for Richard, who couldn't make the webinar today. So moving along, Richard Gunner's Fine Meats first started back on the family farm since the late 80s, which then moved into the meat business in 2001. And this gave us the direct link from paddock to plate for ourselves and other farmers. Our history of using Twitter: firstly, Richard was very curious about the online environment and then checked it out. And after about 6 months of looking around Twitter, he started using it for business purposes. And you can actually go back and see from Twitter records the way that we have merged our usage of Twitter over time. The reasons Richard joined Twitter, it's because he can use it in many ways. You can follow people and read like a personalized newspaper of people you want to follow. It can be used to socialize, and you can also connect with other producers and chefs, and from that perspective it just makes it a very effective medium. And I'll also explain how we use it from our retail perspective. It's also much more interesting compared to normal newspaper or television, as you can do it directly as you're going along and communicate in real time. And here's a photo of Pure Suffolk Lamb, which is one of our flagship brands on one of Richard's farms. Benefits of using Twitter for our business. From a producer perspective, lets us tell our message our way. We can do it from the farm and we can communicate how we want to. It also lets other producers reconnect with city consumers on happenings about what's happening on their farms, and they can share ideas and go from there. From a retailer's perspective, we use Twitter under the ID @FeastFindFoods, and we use it to answer customer questions and also communicate what's happening in our business. And with our customers wanting to know a lot about what we buy, we can also use it to broadcast a message, link it back to our website, and that allows consumers to get a more in-depth understanding of what we're trying to communicate. So that expands from using less than 140 characters, but using them effectively to transmit a message. It also gives us, from a following perspective, a real-time feed of what we're up to and what others are up to, and then we can communicate with them regarding that. From a wholesale perspective, with that being a major part of our business, we can see what our chefs are up to. We can, again, transmit ideas. They can communicate with us. We can real time, and we can then react to these requests very, very quickly. You can also see industry trends and what's happening around the place, and then develop our business from there. This is another one of our brands, our certified Suffolk Lamb, which is milk-fed product, which is a seasonal variety. This is Feast at the Parade, one of our 5 Feast Find Food stores that are around South Australia. and that's been around for quite a few years now. Tips on being more effective on Twitter. As mentioned earlier, setting up alerts, they come in different types, so hashtags being the main one used here. As you can see from the screenshot, the Beef Connect hashtag was used, and then that gave a stream of what was happening on the lead up to the webinar. That screenshot actually came from a social media dashboard, which I'll go into in a bit more detail later, but that's using Hootsuite, which is one of the free programs that are available, and that just lists all the information. To be even more interactive, mobile phone apps now these days are becoming very prevalent. Twitter has their own mobile phone app, which can be downloaded through the App Store for your various phones, and also, again, the social media dashboards have their own apps which can be linked to your account, so you can save different streams, which I'll now go a bit further into. So this social media dashboard is Hootsuite, which basically we use as a way of tracking different parts of communication in Twitter. What I'm showing on this diagram here is when our tweets are being retweeted, and it basically gives you an overview of that, so you know what people have recognized as interesting, and then it sort of can give you a perspective of what to do moving forward. The other key one here is the mentions column, which is whenever somebody mentions your Twitter name which you set up, it basically just has the information here, so you can see it all in real time about who's trying to communicate with you, and it gives you an easy way to respond back. When you have a live version of this, there's actually a reply button, which makes it very easy to communicate. Moving on to Twitter lists. This is another one where users of Twitter actually create their own lists, and these can be grouped basically on a topic or a location. It varies on how people put these together. Like, for example, Feast Fun Foods is on lists, a lot of Adelaide kind of lists. I've got a list here which is food, so a user has created that. They can be a public or a private list, so you can actually search within Twitter for different lists, and it just groups together different tweets, and you can basically follow that list and then see all the tweets that relate to it. If you'd like to contact us further, Richard's Twitter is @Richard_Gunner, and our retail side for Feast Fun Foods, it's @FeastFunFoods, and that's a photo of our pure Suffolk lamb all cooked up. Are there any questions?
Okay, great. Thanks for that, Vince. And thanks for stepping in at virtually the last moment. That was really good of you. So I enjoyed your presentation, and there are a few questions here, but they're more about the way Twitter works as opposed to how you guys are using it.
Sure.
So, well, yeah, look, from your business perspective, one of our listeners is asking, is it better to use a PR person to manage your tweets when it's a business? Would you recommend that approach?
Well, it really comes down to time constraints. Like, depending on how your business is set up, like in our instance, I'm appointed as part of my role as the marketing person to look after social media. Now, if you're a smaller type butcher, and it depends on your staff resources, you could have somebody, maybe a younger person who's up with Twitter, you could have them acting on your behalf, or in reference to using a PR company, that can also be used. Obviously, there's some costs associated with that, but then, like I said, it all comes down to your time and availability. But yeah, PR companies can be very effective because they can provide you with appropriate advice on how to get your message best out there, and then that just makes it more effective if that's the road you want to go down.
Okay, thanks, Vince. Just one more question for you. Do you feel that you get the financial return for the time spent managing your tweets?
I think so, because when you're communicating on Twitter, you're building relationships directly with customers. Now, being able to communicate with them directly, it's going to increase their consumer confidence significantly, because they know they're talking to a real person, and just builds that relationship further. So I definitely feel that, yeah, the time invested is returned, and in the future it's only going to become more common, and I think investing in it now gives you a foot in the door, and yeah, it just gives you that presence in the market and can help you sort of get out there and be ahead of your competitors and other businesses, and then they just refer to you, hopefully, and then yeah, you get customers in the long term.
Great. Okay, well, hey, thanks, Vince. That's been wonderful. So we'll now move on to hear from Sam, who's going to chat with us about using AgChat Oz to connect producers with each other and their consumers. Over to you, Sam.
Well, thanks, James. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Sam Livingston. I'm one of the co-founders of AgChat Oz, along with Danica Lees and Tom Whitty. I very recently also became a cattle producer myself. I currently have 15 Angus steers, and I aim to slowly build that number up over the coming years. The cattle themselves are on a property in Yass, which is about an hour away from Canberra. That's a brief little rundown on me. But before we start, could I get a show of hands who's actually heard of AgChat Oz before?
Great, folks. So just quickly raise your hands, and I can tell you that so far about a third of the audience have heard of AgChat Oz.
Wonderful. Thanks for that. So what is AgChat Oz? Well, very simply, it's an online community for Australians, although we do get tweets in from all over the world who are interested in agriculture. AgChat Oz has started because we saw that there were people in ag that were on Twitter, but they didn't have an easy way to connect with each other. That was nearly 3 years ago now, and it's gone from strength to strength in that time. Twitter is the main platform we use with AgChat Oz, and I really like it. It actually forces people to be concise, to get their point across, because you've only got 140 characters per tweet. That's long enough to tweet your point across, share a photo, a video, even join in on a conversation, but it's short enough so people can't waffle on either. We also have a Facebook page. We use this mainly for questions every week, both to get them from the community and to post them up once the final questions have been decided. We've recently launched our new website as well, which has got a bit more info on AgChat Oz, the background, some blog posts, as well as a transcript of previous chats. So if you haven't checked that out, jump on and have a look. As well. A topic one of our community has suggested, a topic one of our co-founders has come up with, or even a topic that an organisation has suggested and wants to be involved with. For instance, the immigration department with our skilled migration chat. Sometimes you may even see a mixed bag topic. This is where we've got a number of smaller topics, but none really need the full topic length. So we chuck a few together and we have a chat about that. Once we have a topic, we announce it. We try and do it as early as possible to enable as many people as we can to suggest a question. I really enjoy seeing all the different questions come in every week from people all around Australia. I encourage anyone that's got a view on a topic to submit a question. On the Tuesday morning of the chat, the co-founders begin to round up the questions that have been submitted, and we choose through the questions that fit the topic the best, and actually start creating a few if there hasn't been enough submitted. This process could take a few hours or it could take a few minutes, but it's about getting the right questions that fit the topic on the night. Once this is done, we decide the question order and upload it straight to Facebook. The chat begins at about 8 PM Australian Eastern Standard Time, so that's about 7:30 Central Time and about 6 PM Western Standard Time. That's not factoring in daylight savings, however. We try to have about 6 to 8 questions per chat. It does vary depending on the topic and how many questions we get sent in. The chat itself can actually last up to 2 hours if we've got a lot of people on it over a particular topic. It is a fun 2 hours, however, and time does fly really, really quickly. So how can you get involved? Well, firstly, you need to be interested in agriculture. Otherwise, it's going to be a pretty long 2 hours. You also need to have a Twitter account to participate in AgChat Oz. You can also look in on the sidelines, but it's not nearly as fun as joining in. After you've signed up for an account, start using it. Really doesn't matter that you might make a few mistakes at the start. The important thing is that you're having a go. The more you use Twitter, the easier it will become for you. Then join us on a Tuesday night. The first few chats will be big, and the chat moves really fast, but don't let that stop you. There are tools out there to help you keep up. One of those tools is called Tweet Chat. It allows you to pause the chat until you're ready to continue. It doesn't actually stop the chat itself, which will continue happening, but it will stop where your progress is at the moment. Once you press that unpause button, you might have an influx of tweets though. On the Tuesday night during the chat, remember to use the hashtag #AgTutors. If you don't use this in your tweet, it won't appear in the stream, so people won't be able to see what you're saying. A good way around this is to again use Tweet Chat. It automatically puts in the hashtag for you, so you don't need to worry about it. Another way to be involved is to nominate a topic. If you want to nominate one, the broader you make it, the better the chat will be. That will enable us to include as many people as possible on the chat on Tuesday night. You may also like to suggest some questions once a topic's been announced. This too is a great way to get involved and to see the views of the #AgTutors community through the night over a particular topic. So what does it offer producers? This is an important question because everything you do must have some sort of value. Otherwise, there's not much point in doing it. Firstly, Twitter lets you connect with the general public. That's great because they're the ones that ultimately buy what you produce. And increasingly, they want to know how and why things work on the farm, which is fantastic. More people should know how something is produced and appears on the dinner table. A lot of the time, you can inform someone simply by sending a tweet to them. Twitter also lets you connect with producers around Australia and the world. This has benefits in itself, being asking about land management practices, to which breed is the best for your region, to a suggestion for a new livestock agent in a region you're not familiar with. You can even see what the weather's doing just by sending a tweet. Twitter can keep you up to date, as was mentioned by Matt. The latest news from around the world or from the industry. A good example is keeping up to date with emergency services and things that are happening like bushfires, floods, droughts, any kind of natural disaster. Emergency services use Twitter to get the information to the people on the ground to keep them safe. That's a great way to use it. Twitter can also improve your communication skills by being concise and to the point. I'd love to see all producers in the future have great communication skills, as being able to communicate is a really good tool, not just on the farm, but in life in general. Twitter also lets you tell your own story. It's important because everyone's different. What you do in your farm in Roma or Alice Springs is going to be different to what happens on a station in the Pilbara region, and it's definitely going to be different to what happens on my farm in Yass. It's okay to be different. We just need to explain our story and why we do certain things on the farm. Let's move on to my top Twitter tips. Here's my first one. It's #1 tip for a reason. Fill out your bio properly. On screen, you'll see an example of a very bad bio. It's got no information in it. Your bio lets you tell people about yourself, where you're located, a website or blog address for more information, and it lets you put an image up of what you are or of who you are or what you do. I view Twitter bios all the time. I use the info to connect with people who follow me, but too often when people sign up to Twitter, they don't bother spending 2 minutes to fill in their bio. That's a big mistake. Take the time to fill in your bio. Just by filling it in gives you credibility. And if you have filled it in when you first joined up, look over it once in a while. Keep it fresh and keep it up to date. The second tip is to get involved. The more you use Twitter, the better you will be at it. Even if it's only 15 minutes a day, it does make a difference. Please don't give it a go for a week and then decide it isn't for you, because that's not long enough. If you do want to trial it, I recommend about 3 months. It will give you long enough to evaluate it, work out how to use it properly, and see if it's fit for you. Tip 3 is to be yourself. There's no better person to tell your story than you, so give it a go. Showing your personality to your followers is a good thing as well and allows you to develop a relationship with them. My 4th tip is to engage with people. The #AgChatAlls hashtag is a great place to start talking with people and building up your online presence. It doesn't matter if you don't know the person. Tweet them and say hi. If you're new, then say that as well. I try and tweet my new followers every fortnight and ask them a question about what they do or where they are, and I get hints from their Twitter bio. Often they're new to Twitter, and engaging with them is the best way to get them involved and tweeting more. Tip 5 is all about sharing the farm with your followers by taking pictures and videos of what you do. Pictures and videos work really well to let your followers see what you're doing every day. Often the photo's better at explaining something than a tweet. One problem you may have is reception. That's okay. You can still take the photos or the videos. You just tweet them out when you get back into range. The 6th tip here is more tailored towards people who tweet as their business. Anyone can take it on board though, and it is that social media is a two-way street. By that I mean you can't just push content onto people anymore. You actually need to engage with them. A good example of pushing content is the rural media. They often just tweet out stories and not actually engage with anyone. You need to engage. That's the real social side of Twitter and social media. My 7th tip is about the social side again, and that is to get along to tweet-ups. A tweet-up is just a Twitter meetup that happens in real life. You might find that you're at a conference and people that are there, they're on Twitter as well. They meet up for a chat or even dinner. Go along and say hi. It's a great way to put a face to the Twitter name and further engage with people you already talk to online. Tip 8 is that social media is what you make it. If you only go on to Twitter every second month, you aren't going to get much out of it as someone that goes on for a few minutes every day. You get out of it what you put into it. Twitter is very worthwhile and rewarding. You just need to give it a chance. The 9th tip today is to ask for help if you need it. There are plenty of people who will try to help you if you're having trouble with something. Don't be afraid to ask, as one simple tweet might be all it takes to help you along. Don't be afraid of making a mistake either, it's fine. I make them all the time. From misspelling the name of a cattle breed, to forgetting to attach a photograph, to sending a tweet from the wrong account. Don't stress. Everyone's human and everyone makes mistakes. The important thing to understand is the online community is here to help you through it. The 10th and final tip is simple, but it's important. It's to have fun. I have fun every day I'm on Twitter, and that's why I keep coming back. If you're not having fun online, think about why you aren't and change it. It might be as simple as following a few new people. Well, that about wraps up my talk for today. Thank you all so much for listening. Now, I mentioned it just before in my tips, but I really wanted to encourage people to ask for help if they need it. I'm happy to help as much as I can. And if you've got any questions or comments after the talk, here are my contact details. But if you've got a question or comment now, I'm happy to hear them as well.
Okay, good on you, Sam. Thank you very much for that. We do have a few questions. So the first one is, can you explain the term tweet up, please?
So at a conference, and instead of tweeting all the time, they actually say hello to each other in real life. If you go along to a tweet up though, there will be a lot of tweeting. Let's be honest.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. Okay, so there's a question here about who gets to see your tweets. So is it just the person you're following, or can all the people who are following that person, or can you choose them? Can you just talk a bit about who sees your tweets, please?
Sure. Anyone that follows you will see your tweet. If you reply to someone, that will actually bring it out of the public domain and it puts it onto a more personal level. But if you tweet something out, anyone that follows you, in fact anyone that's on Twitter at all, can read what you say. You can make your account private, but I really discourage people to do that, because the aim of social media is to be open and engaging. It's not to be shut down and, I suppose, yeah, tracked off from all of civilization.
Okay, thank you. And how do you measure the effectiveness of Twitter in actually engaging with people? Like, how do you do that?
Well, sure. I think there's a number of ways, really. Building your online presence is a big one. That's not only just to see who can get the most followers, but it's who can have the best interactions, I think. I've got many things out of Twitter. I actually got a job with the government through Twitter. I've got a whole heap of things through Twitter that I wouldn't have got if I hadn't have been online. I've been able to meet some fantastic people through both AgChatOz and just in Twitter in general, which you don't get that. You can see a bit of their personality before you meet them. But, you know, meeting them face-to-face is a fantastic thing, and I really think that, and encourage people to give it a go. Give it 3 months, and if you don't like it or if you just can't get the hang of it, that's okay. But give it 3 months.
Okay, Sam. Is it possible to block negative or aggressive tweeters?
You can block them from your account, but that doesn't mean that the people that follow them won't still see that, I suppose, negativity and hate. And I suppose a perfect example is animal rights activists at the moment. You can block people, but that doesn't mean that they will stop saying what they're saying. You can engage with them, but engage will only get you so far, especially with people that don't want to change their opinions. They're just stuck on the one thing. But blocking is certainly possible, and you can do it if you need to. Okay,
so on a similar vein, if you unfollow someone, do they get an email telling them that you've just unfollowed them?
This is a common one. No, they don't. They may find out later down the track when they try to send you a direct message or something like that. But there's no way of actually knowing unless that person quite strictly observes all their however many 100 followers they've got. So there's no way of knowing. There's certainly no notifications either.
Okay, that's great. Okay, folks, I think we'll hold the questions there. So thanks, everyone, for sending in some really good questions today. So, Sam, I'll just change presenters now and let you off the hook for just a moment. There we go. And by the way, those who've been looking at a Twitter site, or whichever way you are viewing Twitter today, I'd just like to thank Heidi, who's been doing a marvellous job managing our Future Beef Twitter channel for us. So, folks, I really enjoyed hearing all those presentations, and I'll now invite James Nathan to thank today's speakers and tell us a bit more about Beef Central too.
Thanks very much, John, and thanks to Matthew and Vince and Sam for your presentations, guys. It was really interesting info there and some really useful and practical tips on how to use Twitter effectively. I think one of the key messages is that if you're not on Twitter, you're really missing out on a whole range of information sharing and conversations that are going on about the beef industry. I think what we're seeing with Twitter is really just another example of how the web is continuing to transform the way information is delivered and helping people to connect. And it's a trend that probably really makes more sense to people in rural Australia than it probably does for any other sector of the community. In the past, where you really had to wait for news and information to come to you, you can now access important information as soon as it breaks or becomes available, no matter where you live. So, and I guess it's a pretty powerful thing, and I guess that's really why we set up Beef Central as an online news service for the beef and cattle industry. We really wanted to provide a place where people could go to access any news of importance to the beef and cattle industry in a single place. And I think as we've seen today, webinars really offer a really exciting and effective way to disseminate information as well. great to see the level of online engagement that we've seen today. I think more than 300 people registered. So really looking forward to more of these webinars with Future Beef going forward. And if I could also just briefly take the time to thank John for his great efforts in hosting the webinar today. Certainly the level of professionalism that John brings to a webinar like this really makes it all pretty seamless and enjoyable, especially for those of us with our L plates on. So thanks very much, John, and I'll hand it back to you.
Good on you. Thanks there, James. So, folks, I'd be remiss not to mention our Future Beef website. So this is your one-stop shop for beef information, particularly across Northern Australia. And in due course, you'll find the webinar recording, and if you go up and look under resources and multimedia. But as I said earlier, I'll send everyone who registered an email with the magic link for that. Now, and while you're at our website, just click on the little sign up here, and that way you can receive our e-bulletins, and that way you'll hear of our future webinars as well. Now, of course, we'll be asking for your feedback on today's event, and we'll be using SurveyMonkey to help us with that. I'll include a link to that in my follow-up email as well. So, folks, thanks so much for joining us today. It's been marvellous to have so many people. So, yeah, over 300 registered, and about half that number joined us live, which is great because the industry standard is only 30% join live. So it's great to have so many people interested in this topic. Please jump over to Twitter, have a go if you haven't before. It'll be really good to see the interaction that will continue after today's webinar. I'd like to especially thank our speakers again for giving us their time and insights, and a big thank you to all our attendees. And by the way, we do have people with us from Indonesia, New Zealand and Canada. So it's been great having so many people join us. So folks, all the best until we connect again, and all the best for the Easter break, and keep safe if you're travelling. Hooroo now.